Alright guys, today I am going to paint my lower unit. I know a lot of you guys have boats that you run in shallow water, and from time to time you knock some paint off when you hit bottom, especially on a sandy bottom like we have here in the Carolinas. Today I'm going to show you how to prep it and paint it. Pretty simple process. You need to sand it first, then wipe it down with acetone or paint thinner. And if you have a wax cloth, you can do that to get the dust off before you paint, and then you can spray paint it. First, I'm going to take my DA pad, my DA sander. Make sure you don't have too coarse of grit of sandpaper. I use 600 because you can paint over it. Use anything less than 600, you're going to need to feather it out with higher grit sandpaper. So if you use 200, you're going to have to use 400, 600, 800, just to kind of feather it out. So I use 600, and that's what I'm going to use right now. You want to make sure you don't over sand. All I want to do is get the scratches out of the paint. So I'm just trying to sand it down to not bare metal unless it's very thin and there's just a little bit of paint left on the lower unit. Then I will go ahead and sand that paint off before I wipe it down and paint it. So just use good common sense. You don't have to get the paint all the way down to the metal. Just make sure you knock down the scratched areas or the corroded areas. Some of your older lower units, like on your two strokes like I'm dealing with right now, will have corrosion on them, and you'll need to get that corrosion off before you paint. Alright, now I'm going to put acetone on the motor and just wipe it down pretty quick because acetone will take paint off. So I'm going to wipe it down. You need to take these screens off before you paint. So I'm going to take those off, and then I'm going to go ahead and paint this lower unit. Looks pretty good. Need to tape off this upper area around the midsection of your motor. I'm going to do that before I paint it. I've already separated it a little bit, taken the lower unit, loosened it. It's being held on by one bolt loosely, so that way I have a little bit of separation where I can put my paint on there, and you won't have a mess when you try to separate that joint where it cracks the paint and pulls it from each side. Alright, now I'm going to use some 3M painter's tape. Now I'm just going to tape off the area I don't want paint to get on, which is this midsection. Alright, now I'm going to take off this screen on this lower unit so we can paint it. Now I'm going to clean that little pocket out where the screen was sitting. Alright, now I'm going to spray this lower unit, and we're going to finish this job. We want to make long, straight lines and keep the can about 12 inches away from the lower unit. Preferably do this when the wind is not blowing, so you don't get overspray everywhere, and also so your paint lays down on the surface of the lower unit. Alright, I've laid down the first coat of paint on the lower unit. You want to make sure that this paint has a chance to air a little bit and start to dry a little bit before you add the second coat. You can move some of the chemicals away from the paint to help it cure quicker. You can blow on it with an air hose, like an air compressor, but make sure you don't have any water in your air compressor because that'll mess your paint job up. Or you can just wait, but you've got to get those chemicals away from that paint. I forgot what that process is actually called, but you need to wait until that's removed so the paint can start to cure. You don't want to start putting a lot of runs in your paint. The good thing is if you do have a few runs, you can actually go back with 600 grit sandpaper, hand sand it, wet sand it, and then you can go back over and spray it again in that area. You don't have to redo the whole thing, and it's not going to ruin your paint job. But make sure you get all that out before you put your clear coat over the lower unit. And that'll be our final step, is to put clear coat over the paint that we just sprayed. All right, we're at our final step. I put 2 coats on this lower unit. I've covered up all the scratches. I've buried some imperfections on this lower unit from years of scratches and abuse in shallower water. So now I'm going to put the final step, which is clear coat, on the lower unit. You want to put it on thick enough and wet enough where it goes on evenly and has a gloss to it. Therefore it'll have more of a protective finish. It'll protect your paint a little bit longer. But you don't want to put it too thick where it runs. It's there's a fine line, so you might want to practice on a piece of wood before you do it. Make sure the wood is upright so you get the same angle you're going to have when you paint on the lower unit. If you paint on a flat surface that's sitting on the ground, it's never going to run. But anyway, let's get to it. Once again, long, even strokes. It should look wet when you're putting it on. If it's not shining when you put it on, you're not putting it on thick enough. I like to make sure all of my flat surfaces, my smaller surfaces, are coated. Like the edges of your lower unit. All the small edges and the undersides. And just like that, we're done. It doesn't need but 1 coat of clear coat. And you don't want the paint to be fully cured. You want to have a little bit of tack on the paint, so maybe wait 10 minutes after you paint it and then come back with the clear coat. That way the clear coat bonds with the paint, makes it stronger finish. And now we've got a finished product. It looks good. Alright guys, now you know how to do it. Get out there and repair that lower unit. Make it look like new.